Welcome to the new episode of Meet the Vegans, and this week we are doing a new series called Remake or Defecate, and we start with Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero, 1968. This independent horror film would give us the modern zombie and the MPAA film rating system, which came into place a month after the release of the film.
Premiered on the 1st of October 1968 at Pittsburgh's Fulton Theatre. It was shown at the Saturday afternoon matinee consisting of an audience of pre-teens and adolescents. It was typical for theatres to show horror films during the Saturday afternoon matinee.
The public were used to seeing horror films during the Saturday afternoon matinee, but they were entirely unprepared and stunned into silence by this film. This was something else. This was Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, 1990. The 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead was directed by special effects artist Tom Savini and stars Tony Todd, Patricia Tallman and Tom Towles. Savini was originally hired to perform the special effects, but Romero would eventually persuade Savini to direct.
But even the king of splatter, Savini, would find the production hard going and describe the experience as the worst nightmare of his life. He'd often clash with producers who wouldn't let him see his vision through for the film.
The first reactions to this remake were negative, but over time the critics have become more appreciative of this effective horror classic remake. So the 1968 version of Night of the Living Dead plays heavily on human emotion more than it does zombie. Yeah?
Yeah, I'd agree with that one.
So,
as always.
Yes, obviously in the 60s it feels like a 60s movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would have said it felt like a 50s movie.
Really?
Yeah, because of the shoddy camera work.
Yes, because there are points when...
which comes about here and there.
Straight at the beginning, there's a corner of the lens covered, which you can clearly see.
By something, a t-shirt or
and then
piece of
there's
paper.
a scene in the house.
Yeah.
Again, the lens covered in the corner.
But no, I mean, I'd say, like, looking at it, it looks like a 50s movie to me, not a 60s.
Well, no, it had the...
It always surprised me that it was so late.
Especially
in
1968.
60s, yeah.
And especially just the fact that it was shot in black and white. To me,
I think that was
cheaper. Just the
cost,
cheap value of it. But I think it did have a 60s feel about it, especially when you see the interaction between Ben and Barbara. It is that 60s kind of lovey-dovey feel to it. And as much as it's trying to be this independent horror film, it kind of stuck to the 60s movie rules as far as I felt it was. As much as I love it, and I think it was Romero's gateway, to be honest, into how famous he became.
Yeah.
It does feel...
I wouldn't have said he was overly famous. I think he could walk down the street and not get harassed as much as some people.
He's famous.
Like if you saw Steven Spielberg, you know that he's just going to get harassed to fuck.
Yeah, but don't forget, but Romero was famous in his own right within the horror fan.
Yeah. I was just saying that it's nice that he's grounded.
Yeah. So it's like anyone, it was like... anyone else from the horror, like the kind of like the genre, like you'd know Tom Savini could walk down the street and no one knew who he was.
Yeah, Steve Miner. If you said Steve Miner,
everyone would know who Steve was.
Who? Exactly, you wouldn't fucking recognise him on the fucking street. Steve fucking Miner.
But Night of the Living Dead, yeah. So the '68 version played heavily on the emotions more than it did zombies. And obviously it's got that classic line at the beginning, "They're coming to get you, Barbara."
Yeah.
Set in that rural Pittsburgh cemetery. And I like the little facts that come with this movie, like the fact when the actors who were the zombies were eating on the flesh, which was boiled ham covered in chocolate sauce. And the fact between meat and chocolate sauce was making the actors vomit and puke everywhere.
Which, let's face it, in a zombie film would probably look pretty good.
Looked amazing. I mean, Romero starred in the film. He was the hand that comes out of the ground. And that's as far as Romero went with it. John Russo and Romero wrote the screenplay. And it's a really good screenplay. I mean, for a late 60s movie, like I said, it was an emotional roller coaster at points.
The story holds up well, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, what happens if we put these people together in isolation? You know, it's been done thousands of times, sort of thing. It's one of them stories that's just like, you could tell it and retell it, cut it up and tell it again, sort of thing. It's just one of them stories, isn't it?
And I like, and it was probably one of the few zombie films especially in Romero's line of zombie films, where they play on how the zombies came about. Obviously, in this movie, they play on the radiation. Then we move to, like, flip side to the 90s, and again, Tom Savini's version starts in a rural Pittsburgh cemetery. Bill Moseley starts the classic line of "They're coming to get you, Barbara."
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
But I think Moseley delivers it a million times better than the '68 version.
I'd like to say it's probably just the way it's shot, isn't it? Sort of thing.
I think Moseley throws that comedic kind of essence to it. He's more taking the mickey out of his sister.
Yeah.
Whereas the '60s version didn't really have that kind of comedy effect where the 90s
you didn't know
version,
if he was actually taking the piss or
yeah. Whereas like this one, you see more of Bill Moseley as Johnny kind of pulling himself down behind the grave, you know, and saying, "They're horny, Barbara. They're really horny." You know, and look, there's one now. So, and I think the 90s plays a bit more on comedy, where the 60s didn't. The 60s was quite serious at points, especially when it came to the Coopers in the cellar.
Yeah.
Because this is something where you're playing on your little girl's been injured, you don't know what's happened, and it did really put them on a serious note, the Coopers in the cellar. And it's like they portrayed it in the 60s as those things. Wasn't it?
It wasn't zombies.
Yeah, they were
those
referred.
Those creatures.
Those things.
Undead creatures.
Yeah, even though they knew they were human, they hadn't been told what was happening to them yet.
Yeah.
They refer to them as those things. Whereas the 90s, the Coopers, to be honest, the twats, if I'm honest, in the 90s version, they got it right. They got that New Yorker kind of style, horrible person.
Arrogant.
Yeah, and it was just, and he played it off really well. Tony Todd's portrayal of Ben was very overemphasised at the beginning.
It was emphasised.
I mean, if you look at,
but it's Tony Todd.
But no, it's Tony Todd. Yes, all right.
Fucking Todd.
But if you see him as the movie goes on, he kind of calms down.
He must have had his fix. Yeah, his Weetabix. That's what he's had.
Because the beginning of it, he's like, isn't he?
A bit like Peter Cushing in like early Frankenstein movies.
Yeah, man.
He like grabs himself. But yeah, I know what you mean, like theatrical sort of acting.
It was a bit over the top for it, but it kind of calmed down as the movie goes on. And then, obviously, the 90s version plays more heavily on zombies than it does the human emotion. It kind of runs through the story pretty quick, the 90s version, and just really wants to show the spectacle of zombies coming in and what it's more like when if there's just 5 or 6 of them around, it's okay, but if there's 20 of them, you're fucked, basically. And that's what I like about the zombies. And I think Romero pushed on that in his later zombie movies. Because it was obviously, in the 68, it wasn't the first.
It developed, didn't it, sort of thing?
Well, obviously,
it was like night and then dawn and then day. But every one, you sort of got a bit more information about
where they was coming from.
Yeah, where they were coming from, what people are trying to do to survive and all that lot. How it is, what the streets look like and all that lot.
Yeah, it was good, and obviously as the movies went on, the more gore came.
Yeah.
Whereas this, the 68 version...
It was just to shock you, really.
Yeah, it was for its time. People. I mean, I would have loved to have been in that era and just experienced what happened with that movie.
Yeah.
Because that would have thrown everyone. I mean, coming from very early, like, young horror fans, weren't we?
Yeah.
That we watched numerous movies. I mean, must have watched like millennia of horror films. The amount of time we've watched. We've seen that many.
We ain't seen that, man.
We have. But I'd definitely love to experience that in the late 60s.
The thing is, though, like Alfred Hitchcock got done for showing a flushing toilet. So think about that.
Yeah,
and that's a flushing toilet.
And obviously, the MPAA got introduced shortly after this movie because of how horrified viewers were of seeing this movie.
Yeah.
To me, that's just great.
Yeah, that's a compliment.
If anything,
movie that is a compliment.
Can stir something like that, it is a classic. And the fact that Romero was praised for having the first African American person as the main role in his film.
Yeah.
And it's something that nobody else was doing. And I don't think, race had anything to do with it. It was just how Romero and Russo decided to write the movie.
Yeah. I don't even think they wrote it as a black guy, I think.
No, I think they just wrote it.
They basically just picked him because he was the last one to act, basically. That's what I think it was.
And it was
I'll
just...
to find out about that.
You have to dig into that one.
I will do.
But it was...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just a case of, like, he was the last actor that...
showed up for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it was actually written for an Afro-American guy.
Either way, they got praised for it.
Well, yeah.
And it put them on the map. Again, it's another point. This movie has so many points where they got put on the map for it.
Yeah.
Flip side to the 90s again. Great choice in Tony Todd. We all knew him from The Candyman, which were another horror film that hopefully they'll never remake.
Oh, they will.
Yeah. And the people that were in that, I mean, we had some lesser experienced actors, especially, was it Tommy, his name? Yeah, it's Tommy, the young lad in the cellar.
Oh, right, yeah.
His acting in the 90s version was very over the top, very inexperienced actor.
Look at me, I'm a thespian and I'm acting in front of the camera.
And there were elements of cheap in both movies. But for me, I think the 90s version stands out a bit better for me. There are elements in it that runs closer to the lead up of Dawn of the Dead. And it runs smoother. As much as Dawn of the Dead was done in the 70s and this is the 90s, I think Tom Savini opened the gateways for a better run on to Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, if you watch Night of the Living Dead, the 68 one, and then straight into Dawn of the Dead, you'd be like, what the fuck's going on here? How has this happened? But yeah, there's a bit more of a smoother transition.
Contrasting, transition to it.
The 91 and then going into the old Dawn of the Dead.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But obviously, the 90s version is basically just a showcase of Tom Savini's artwork. And Romero forced Savini into that directorial chair. And as
soon as he sat down, Romero was like, bye.
Yeah. Bit of a bastard, to be honest.
What a twat.
But
give him a load of work to do.
Yeah, and as much as Savini found it hard, to me, it was a bloody good...
I think he pulled it off.
Yeah, he did.
Easily.
He pulled it off. It was a bloody good rendition of an already classic movie.
And it literally is a remake.
Yeah, and it literally is a remake. And
there's nothing really changed in it.
No.
A couple of features here and there. But
it's just, the difference is, the story, in the 90s version, the stories run on a lot quicker. They emphasise more on the zombies. They changed the ending slightly. The ending's is quite drawn out, but with more story in it.
Yeah.
The 68 version is quite abrupt. And obviously,
yeah,
Barbara dies
this is
in
the
it.
End.
Yeah.
Done.
Barbara dies in it. They all basically die in it. Whereas the 90s version, Barbara is the sole survivor. She is the link. And obviously, when she escapes from the house, you get to see all the rednecks in the field shooting the zombies that are hanging from the trees, was what you see in Dawn of the Dead. And the little element of the helicopter flying over is obviously Flyboy and the helicopter and all the crew in it from Dawn of the Dead. So
Go Flyboy.
Yeah, that's the smooth transition for me, and that's what makes the 90s version a better version than Romero's.
I wouldn't say by much though.
Not by much, but it's still the screen.
I think that's just down to the way it's shot.
But even so, Romero did
the colour and that. Different ways of using the camera.
Yeah, it was different shots.
Don't forget this is his first film.
Well, yeah.
So he's still learning on the job.
But he had a lot of experience on the job. He'd been around for a long time. He'd gone through the Friday films, Friday the 13th films. He'd spent a lot of time on set seeing what directors went through.
Yeah.
So I think Savini, from his learning curve, was a really good learning curve. He spent so much time on set that he actually pretty much knew what he was doing, in a way, without actually knowing he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So with this series being called Remake or Defecate, in no way was this remake an act of defecation. It was actually a really good remake. I'm surprised that it came 22 years after the original. Both movies follow pretty much same suit, a little bit of changes here and there, but for me the remake fits better into the original trilogy from Romero. Romero did the screenplay for both. It worked, yeah. It's not very often you get something like that in a remake where the original crew come in pretty much and
do it all over again.
And do it all over again, and it works. So for me, yeah, it's a winner.
And for me, it's a winner as well.
Happy days.
Chicken dinner.
So, if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button. If you agree or disagree, hit us up in the comments below and smash that like button.
Smash it hard.
And remember,
hail the vegans.